In this video, we'll build 3 tools to help you in your forensic security work. Number 1, PingSweep. One of the first tasks that you have when you come into a new environment is to scan for machines. How do you do that? You PingSweep. First up, we'll clone the repository that I created for you. Just type in the following command: git clone https://github.com/microservice/powertools. The link to the repository is also down in the description. Check it out. Now let's go back into a virtual machine and continue where we left off. Press enter, wait a couple of seconds, and a new folder appears. In it you have 3 different PowerShell scripts: PowerScan, PowerPing, and PowerFuzzer. After cloning, you change directory into PowerTools, and then you import PowerPing first. Once that is done, you can use the invoke PowerPing commandlet to scan your environment. After a while, you will see all the IP addresses that are found in your subnet or the subnet that you specified. In my case, it's 8 of them. And what I would now want to do is understand better how this works. So let's look at the code in PowerTools and then PowerPing. First up, we see that we define a function that's called invoke PowerPing. We define a base IP that is 192.168.0 dot. That's important, add the dot, because we will later need to use it. We define a new list. Lists in PowerShell are very similar to Python lists in that they can have different elements in them, and you have add and remove functionality that you might want to use later. While arrays also in PowerShell are fixed size, so you might have to know beforehand how long or how many IPs you want to find, which doesn't make sense in our use case. Then we just loop through numbers 1 to 255. Tag LT stands for less than. So this goes from 1 until $I is less than 256, so 255, and increments it. We define a new variable that's our base IP plus our current iterator number and turn that into a string because we want to do a string concatenation. And then we use the PowerShell commandlet test connection with a counter 1, so we only send 1 packet to our IP address. Do that in a quiet manner, and whatever happens in errors, we don't really care about it. We just want to have the results. Then we check if our result of the connection is true, and if it is, we add it to our list. In the end, we then return the live list, which is all the IP addresses that should be available, and respond to ping in our subnet. Number 2, port scanner. I then went on and saved all of the IP addresses into a file. We can check that out with the get content commandlet and give it ips.txt, and those are all the IP addresses. Next up, we import our PowerScan, which is our port scanner. Then we read the content of our IP.txt, which is all the IP addresses that came out of our IP sweep. Then we pipe that into a for each loop. The percentage sign is basically the shortcut for that. We could also type it out, but I'm lazy. And then curly braces, and everything in the curly braces gets run per item. The $_ is the current iteration that we're in. That means this gets translated into each IP address that comes out of get content. And then we scan for port 80 on those machines. And very quickly we can see that port 80 is open on a lot of machines. 192.168.0.1, 04, and 44 have port 80 open. If we do the same scan with port 8080, that should have a different result. So we have 3 machines that also have port 8080 open. Let's also look at the source code of our PowerScan. Again, we define a function. In this instance, it's called invoke PowerScan. We have a couple of parameters that need to be provided. One of them is a list of IP addresses, can also be a singular one, and a potential list of ports. If no ports are provided, we create an array from a for loop. That's what these 2 dots are, from number 1 to 65535, which is all the TCP ports, or also all the UDP ports. Then we create an empty hash map, and next up we loop through all the IPs in our IP array, create an entry in our hash map with an empty list as the value, and then loop through all of the ports that we want to check. If any are provided, this is then checking just the ones that are provided by the user, If none are provided, then it checks all the ports. Since this can fail, we need to wrap everything in a try and catch block. We create a socket and then connect using the IP address and the port with a command that is provided by PowerShell. And we created an object called TCP client, which takes one IP address and one port that it tries to connect to. If we can connect, that means the port is open. We can then close the socket and write this port into our IP address dictionary or hash map. And if we cannot connect, we can continue, because then this port is closed and then we can try the next one. At the end, we print out all the different IP addresses and ports so that they can be used for further processing. Finally, number 3, directory fuzzer. We import the PowerFuzzer script and then check the source code to see what we need to provide. And here what it needs is first up an IP address or an address, it can also be a URL, and the word list path. Forced directory browsing needs a word list in order to understand what can I check, how do I find it. What the script does, it's first opening the word list, reading in the content into memory, and then for each item in the word list or each line, we create an URI, which is the IP address or the address slash and then the current item. Again, we have a try and catch block. We try to create a web request with our URI and then select the status code. If the status code is 200, we write out the URI plus the status code. If not, we continue. This is a very basic directory fuzzer. Usually you would also want to test for 301 and others, but I wanted to make this as simple as possible. Let's download the word list. We will use Daniel Miesler's checklist, and the specific one that we will use is called common.txt. I'll provide the link in the description. Go back into PowerShell, and we want to scan a specific IP address. In our case, 192.168.0.44. So I would use invoke PowerFuzz 192.168.0.44, and then our word list. We let that run, and then we wait and see what happens. We could combine all 3 scripts to run one after the other, but I leave that as a task for you to do, because this is how you learn. You try things out, and it's done. It found a lot of folders, pretty interesting ones. For example, downloads or .ssh would not be folders that I would expect on a normal web server, but they can always be there. So that works, which is cool. What you can try now is to make these tools faster and more applicable to your use case. For example, you can provide CIDR notation for the PowerPing. You can also try to use threading or run spaces that enable you to request multiple things at once. Right now it's just single threaded. And you can also try to interact with more in-depth functionality of Windows. I try to keep these tools as simple as possible so that beginners have a better understanding of what's going on and how to make them work. If you have any suggestions for what other tools I might try to put into the PowerTool repository, feel free to either add a pull request or an issue, and then let's try to build something cool together. Until next time, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you very much.
Subscribe now.